The US-China tariff war, I mean, it's been dominating the headlines lately, right? Capturing everyone's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are watching closely.
Totally. We're all trying to figure out, how this whole economic standoff might play out. Because it's not just about markets, is it? It affects, well, pretty much all of us.
For sure, it ripples through supply chains, hits consumer prices, it shapes international relations in really big ways.
And when you're up against something that complex, you just want to cut through the noise. You want the real story, the underlying strategies, without getting completely bogged down.
Exactly. And that's really the whole point of these deep dives, isn't it? Taking something complicated and giving you a framework, a way to understand it more clearly.
Like a strategic advantage for your own thinking.
Precisely.
So today, our framework, it comes from this really fascinating book, The Art of Strategy. Now, some folks might recognize that name or something like it.
Yeah, it's actually an updated take on an older, very influential book called Thinking Strategically. Same authors, but they've refined the ideas.
Right. So new title, but the core mission, that's the same. Basically, to change how you see the world, to give you the tools for strategic thinking in, well, almost any situation.
And what's really interesting in this update is this subtle shift, but it's important. The earlier work, understandably, focused a lot on, the competitive side, winning.
The head-to-head stuff.
Exactly. But the art of strategy really brings out the crucial role of cooperation. Good strategy, it turns out, isn't just about beating the other guy.
It's more nuanced.
It's about finding that right blend, that mix of competition and collaboration to get where you want to go.
Which just feels right, doesn't it? I mean, even in something like those big trade talks, there has to be some common ground, some shared rules, or everything just falls apart.
Absolutely. There are always underlying agreements, even in conflict.
So in this deep dive, we're going to pull out some core ideas from the book. We'll talk about thinking ahead and reasoning backward, kind of like seeing the whole chessboard.
Anticipating moves.
And the surprising power of commitment. How sometimes locking yourself in can actually give you more leverage. Weird, right?
It sounds counterintuitive, but yeah, it works.
We'll also look at why being unpredictable can be, well, smart strategy. And then there's this whole fascinating area of signaling how we send messages and screening how we try to figure out what others know.
All rooted in game theory, but with, like you said, really practical uses for understanding everything from global events down to, say, your next salary negotiation.
Okay, ready to jump in?
Let's do it. Let's start with that foundational idea. Thinking ahead and reasoning backward.
Okay, so what does that actually mean in practice? It sounds a bit like, I don't know, mental time travel.
Yeah, sort of. In essence, it's about picturing the future consequences of what you do now. And then you use that future picture to guide your decisions today.
Okay.
In strategic games with other people involved, it means trying to figure out how they will react to your moves. And then you work backward from those potential endgames to find your best opening move.
Still feels a little abstract. Can we ground it? An example maybe?
Sure. The book uses a great one, Charlie Brown and the Football. You know the drill.
Oh yeah. Lucy pulls it away.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Right. Now, if Charlie actually used this look-ahead, reason-back logic, what would he do? He'd anticipate Lucy's move based on, well, all that history.
He'd see himself flat on his back before he even runs up.
Exactly. By reasoning backward from that inevitable, painful outcome, he'd realize that trying to kick the ball is maybe not the smartest play. He'd prune that bad branch off his decision tree, so to speak.
Got it. So don't just act. Anticipate the reaction. What's their next move, and how does that change my first move?
You got it. It's about the chain reaction, playing mental cause and effect a few steps down the line.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the book gives a more serious example, the Fredo in Fredonia scenario. Imagine you're investing, say, $100,000 with this guy Fredo in Fredonia.
Okay.
He promises a massive return, turn it into $500,000 in a year, split 50-50. Sounds amazing.
Too good to be true?
Well, here's the catch. Fredonian law is iffy. If Fredo just decides to keep the whole lot at the end, can you actually enforce the contract? How reliable is their legal system?
Ah, okay. Stakes are definitely higher than a football game now. So how does the thinking ahead, reasoning back, help here?
You look at the final step. What happens at the end of the year? If Fredo's only thinking about this one deal, and the law there won't really stop him.
Well, to stop him from just taking the money and running.
Exactly. If you reason backward from that possible outcome, you lose your $100,000. You might decide the initial investment, even with that juicy promise, is just too risky. You saw a bad future, so you avoid that path now.
Right. It forces you to think about everyone's incentives and the potential for, well, people being cheats if there's no real downside for them.
Precisely, especially when trust is low or enforcement is weak. But then the book points out, what if it's not a one-shot deal?
Like if Fredo wants to do more business later.
Right. If he needs future investors or relies on international trade, then his reputation matters. Your ability to retaliate, maybe by bad-mouthing him or going after other assets, that changes things.
So the threat of future consequences keeps him honest now.
It can, yeah. That larger context, the ongoing game, completely shifts the strategy. It's not just this single transaction anymore.
So it's about how this one decision fits into the bigger picture, the whole web of future interactions.
That's it. And to help visualize these kinds of sequences, especially with multiple players, the book talks about game trees.
Like a map of moves and counter moves.
Kind of, yeah. It maps out all the possible decision paths for everyone involved, showing the potential outcomes or payoffs down each branch. It's different from a simple decision tree where it's just you making choices.
Because you have to account for what they might do at each step.
Exactly. You're trying to see it from their perspective, predict their choices. By mapping it out, you can sometimes see the best path through the complexity.
So it's not just, what should I do? It's always, what will they probably do? And then what's my best response to that? Like running simulations in your head.
That's a good way to put it. Stepping into their shoes, understanding their goals. Of course, the book notes for really complex games like, say, chess.
Oh yeah, the number of possibilities must be insane.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
The game tree becomes unbelievably huge, fully solving chess with this method. It's actually beyond what even our best supercomputers can handle right now.
Wow. Okay, that really drives home how complex strategy can get. All right, so we've got thinking ahead and reasoning backward. What's the next big principle from the book? Something that helps us think strategically, maybe even about those US-China dynamics.
Okay, the next really powerful idea is commitment. Strategic commitment.
Commitment, like sticking to something.
Sort of, but it's more specific. It's an action you take that deliberately limits your own future options. And by doing that, you influence what others choose to do.
Wait, limit your own options. Why would you do that? Sounds like you're tying your own hands.
Because sometimes tying your hands, making a credible commitment, changes the whole game. It can actually expand your power by forcing the other player's hand. Think of it like burning your bridges so you have to march forward.
Okay, that's interesting. How does that work? Give me an example.
The book uses Charles de Gaulle, the French president, and his stance on Britain joining the European Economic Community, the EEC, back in the day.
Right, he kept vetoing them, didn't he?
He did, twice. His repeated, unwavering "non" showed this was an absolutely irrevocable position for him. He wasn't bluffing, he drew a hard line.
So he basically made it a deal breaker.
Exactly. By being so inflexible, he put the other EEC countries in a tough spot. Either accept France's veto or risk the whole community falling apart. He figured, correctly it seems, that they valued the EEC more than Britain's immediate entry.
So his commitment, his inflexibility, limited their options and gave him the power.
Pretty much. His assessment of his leverage was key. Of course, while it worked for him then, the book also points out potential downsides.
Right, being too rigid can backfire, can it? What if things change?
Absolutely. De Gaulle's biographer, David Schonbrun, argued that this perceived sort of extreme nationalism and unwillingness to compromise eventually hurt France's relationships long term.
So there's a balance. Commitment is powerful, but pure stubbornness might not be sustainable.
Definitely. Sometimes flexibility and finding common ground is the better long-run strategy. But the principle remains. A calculated commitment can reshape the strategic landscape.
Thinking about the US-China stuff again, could threatening more tariffs be seen as that kind of commitment, like signaling you're willing to accept the pain to get a concession?
That's exactly the kind of strategic move it represents. The threat acts as a commitment if the other side believes it's credible, believes you'll actually follow through despite the costs.
Credibility is key. Got it. Now, the book also mentions another angle on commitment, making defeat worse to boost your chances of winning. That sounds pretty extreme.
It is, but think about Cortez in Mexico. When he arrived, he supposedly scuttled or burned his own ships.
No turning back.
Right. He eliminated any option of retreat. It was conquer or perish. By making failure so catastrophic, he drastically raised the stakes and, presumably, the determination of his forces. Xenophon apparently did something similar way back.
Wow. Burning your boats. Forces total investment from everyone.
It's a powerful motivator, and the book connects this even to personal goals. They tell this story about Cindy, who wanted to lose weight. She knew the health reasons, but struggled.
What finally worked?
The fear of her ex-boyfriend seeing her overweight on TV. Her friend promised to make sure he watched if Cindy didn't hit her goal.
Seriously, that's intense.
But it worked. That external threat, that self-imposed, really negative consequence for failing became her commitment device. It provided the push she needed.
It's amazing how making the downside more real can work better than just focusing on the upside. Like using fear as fuel.
Right. Even if the internal drive isn't quite there yet, setting up an external commitment that makes failure more painful can, well, get the ball rolling.
And then maybe the internal motivation catches up later.
Often it does, yeah, like it did for Cindy. But that initial kind of drastic commitment was the spark.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Thinking ahead, commitment, what's next? You mentioned unpredictability being strategic. That sounds paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it? But it's crucial in certain situations, especially when interests directly clash. Being predictable can be your downfall.
How so?
The book has this great story about Christie's and Sotheby's, the big auction houses. They were competing for a major assignment, and it somehow came down to a game of rock, paper, scissors to decide who got it.
No way. Rock, paper, scissors for millions.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
And Christie's played scissors, Sotheby's played paper, Christie's won.
Okay, so where does the unpredictability come in?
Well, think about it. If Sotheby's had known Christie's was going to play scissors, what would they have done?
Played rock, obviously.
Right.
And a one.
Exactly. In a game like that, or any situation where your opponent is trying to anticipate you, you cannot be predictable. If you always play rock, they'll play paper. If you always do X, they'll find the counter, Y.
So you have to keep them guessing. Prevent them from getting a read on you.
That's the essence of it. Keep them uncertain. The book then brings up this interesting paradox you see in things like, say, futures contracts.
Go ahead.
Both people entering the contract think they're going to make money, right? They think they'll come out ahead.
Yeah, otherwise why do it?
But logically, one of them has to be wrong. So, what makes each side so sure they have the better information or insight? Unless there's some kind of inside track, why do you assume you can outsmart the person taking the other side of the bet?
Huh. It's like that old saying, if you sit down at a poker game and you can't spot the sucker in the first half hour, then you are the sucker.
Yeah, it has that kind of flavor. And that leads right into poker strategy.
Right. If you only bet big when you have amazing cards.
Good players will figure that out fast. They'll fold every time you bet big. Unless they have an unbeatable hand themselves, you'll only win tiny pots.
Well, you have to bluff.
You have to bluff sometimes. You need to mix it up, bet strongly sometimes, even with a weaker hand, just to be unpredictable. That way, when you do have a monster hand, they might actually call you because they're not sure if you're bluffing or not.
But you risk getting caught bluffing.
You do. And here's the really weird part. You almost need to get caught bluffing occasionally.
Why?
So that people know you're capable of bluffing. If they think you might be bluffing, they're more likely to call your bets later when you actually have the goods. It's this strange dance.
Wow. Okay, so being unpredictable, even deliberately random sometimes, is the actual strategy.
In certain zero-sum or highly competitive situations, yes. If you have a predictable pattern, you will be exploited. Introducing randomness, a mixed strategy, makes you harder to beat. It maximizes your average outcome over time when you can't guarantee winning every single hand. You can even sometimes calculate the optimal amount of randomness.
Intentionally random. That's wild. Okay, so let's move to the last big concept for today. Signaling and screening. Sounds like it's all about information.
Exactly. It's about how we communicate or try to figure out what others know, especially when information isn't shared equally. Everything you do or don't do can potentially send a message.
So, signaling is sending the message.
Right. Signaling is taking specific actions intended to convey your private information credibly. And for a signal to be credible, it generally has to be costly or difficult enough that someone without that information wouldn't want to fake it. Like putting your money where your mouth is.
Okay, like maybe a company spending a ton on R&D signals, they're confident about future products.
That's a broader example, yeah. The book uses a more direct one, offering a warranty on a used car.
How's that a signal?
Well, think about it. If you know your car is in great shape, offering a warranty might not cost you much because it probably won't need repairs. But if you know it's a lemon...
Offering a warranty could get really expensive really fast.
Exactly. So if the cost of providing the warranty is significant, only someone confident in the car's quality would find it worthwhile to offer one. The costliness of the signal makes it credible. It signals, I believe this car is good.
That makes total sense. The cost filters out the fakers. Okay, so what about screening? That sounds like the opposite, trying to get information from others.
Precisely. Screening is when the party with less information sets up a situation or maybe offers a menu of choices designed to get the other party to reveal their hidden information through the choices they make.
Like setting a trap. Not really a trap, but...
More like designing a test where people sort themselves out. The book mentions the general idea of, in a negotiation with uneven info, letting the uninformed person choose which side of a bet to take. That can sometimes level the field.
Can you give a more concrete example? How does screening work day to day?
A classic one is airline tickets. Business travelers usually want flexibility, last-minute changes, refundable tickets, and they're willing to pay more for it.
Right. Leisure travelers are usually hunting for the lowest price and will put up with restrictions.
Exactly. So airlines offer different fare classes.
Yes.
Expensive, flexible tickets and cheap, non-refundable tickets, maybe with Saturday stay requirements. By offering this menu, they screen their customers.
People choose the option that fits their needs, and in doing so, they reveal whether they're a price-sensitive leisure traveler or a time-sensitive business traveler.
You got it. They self-select. The airline designs the choices so that people naturally reveal their type, their willingness to pay, their priorities. It's about creating options that sort people based on their private info.
Clever. So designing the choices is the key.
Absolutely. The options have to be set up so different types genuinely prefer different choices. The book also touches on things like college transcripts. Choosing a hard class for a grade versus pass-fail can signal a student's confidence and ability. Employers use this to screen applicants.
So signaling and screening are happening all around us. Negotiations, marketing, education.
Incredibly common. Understanding these dynamics helps you see what's really going on beneath the surface and makes you a much savvier player in your own strategic interactions.
Wow. This has been really illuminating. A proper deep dive into the art of strategy.
Yeah.
We've covered, let's see, thinking ahead and reasoning back.
The power of commitment.
Right, commitment. And the surprising value of being unpredictable, using mixed strategies.
And finally, signaling and screening, sending and decoding information when knowledge is uneven.
It feels like we've got a whole new toolkit now for looking at complex situations.
And hopefully everyone listening feels that way too. You're better equipped now to see the underlying game theory, the strategies playing out, even if you're not, drawing game trees on napkins.
Definitely. So here's something to chew on, a final thought. Think about a recent headline, maybe something about those US-China talks we started with, or a big decision at work, or even just a negotiation you had. How might these ideas, commitment, signaling, thinking ahead, give you a new perspective on what's really going on? What hidden strategies might be unfolding that you can now maybe recognize?
It's a great exercise. We really encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Look for the strategy in everyday life, in the news. The more you practice seeing the world through this lens,
The better you get at navigating it all.
exactly, you become better prepared to make your own informed decisions in this very strategic world we live in.